Hi, I'm Dolly Vasta, and welcome back once again to For Art's Sake. We're taping today in the lovely old town of Lambertville at the home and studio of well-known painter, sculptor, Edward M. Adams. Ed, how long have you been painting and sculpting? Is this something you've been doing all your life, or did you get started later on?
Well, Dolly, I think it's something that's been part of my life since I was a child. At some level, I was making something with my hands. When it came time to make a decision about college, I had applied to some schools for art and some for psychology, and I had no idea how to make a living as an artist. I had no models in my experience, so I decided to pursue art or psychology. But while I was doing that, I was taking art classes through college. So it's something that was always there. It was kind of like a hum of a refrigerator, you know. I knew it was always there, and sometimes I really paid attention to it. And then about maybe 12, 15 years ago, I made a decision to pursue it full-time and professionally. So that's what brought you here today.
I know I asked you earlier which was your vocation and which was your avocation now.
Well, I believe that I consider myself an artist who happens to also be a psychologist, rather than a psychologist who happens to be an artist.
Does that give you an insight into what you do?
The psychology?
Yeah.
Not a lot.
Gee, that's honest. I expected this profound answer.
No, because when I'm doing my art, I'm not paying any attention to the psychological content of it. I'm interested in creating a piece of art that is a good piece of art, and it's only after the piece is done I would step back from it or hear other people's comments that the psychological aspect of it it comes in. I don't really pay attention to that.
But when you're doing a piece of art, you're really working not just with your head and your hands, but you're really working with your gut.
Yes.
And psychology is the same thing. So there is a tie in there.
There is a tie in there, and the psychology, if you think about what an artist does is to express his or her inner life and life experiences. I've had the advantage of being around the inner life of hundreds of people in 25 years. So I think that that richness of humanity is hopefully reflected in my work.
Do you find your work has changed tremendously in depth over the last 10, 15 years?
Yes. It's changed because when one begins, and this is, I think, pretty typical, when an artist begins, the thought is that art should be something that is like what you've seen all your life. It has to be sort of referenced in some particular way to a previous artist or the acceptable styles and so on. And as one matures, you begin to realize that what you're doing is beginning to be yourself. And the more yourself you become, the more authentic the work becomes, and the more unique it becomes because you're unique.
How would you describe your work?
It's one of the hardest questions.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. I struggle with that because I think that the work is very individual. There's a very particular sort of style that seems to have emerged over a period of time. It borrows, it comes from the traditions. I see in my work the influence of people like Milton Avery and Mark Rothko, and every artist has been somehow influenced by Picasso. People see the work of Chagall, they see all these different references, but no one can pin me down. No one can say that is this person or that's that person, because it's Ed Adams.
Would you say, though, it was more impressionistic than realistic, or is it a combination of both?
Well, it's sort of a figurative abstract, if I had to label it something. There is a figurative element to it, but a lot of emphasis is on an abstraction or a putting together of the pieces in a totally different way. So I would say figurative abstract if I was pushed.
Now, not only do you paint, and you do paint in an unusual fashion.
Yes.
You don't use a brush.
I don't use a brush. Very seldom, maybe for some fine detail now and then, but I use my hands and Scott towels and sometimes a stick or some other piece of something laying around the studio that will allow me to texturize the painting. I find that the direct application of paint with my hands gives me much more satisfaction. I have more control over it. I'm able to make the paint deep. I'm able to lighten it. I'm able to push into the board or canvas as hard as I can. So I think it's the sculptor in me who paints and wants that tactile, direct contact.
One of the things that impressed me the most when I looked at your work was that it's very bright. It's not dreary, it's not dark. So you think, to me, I would say if I was a psychologist, that you think in terms of happiness, of brightness.
It's all an illusion.
Oh, you're really sitting in a dark corner
Right.
somewhere.
I'm really a miserable human being. Right?
No, you're not. Not
No.
with that work.
Yeah, I think that the work is, years ago I taught sculpture in New Mexico for about 3 summers. And I think that influence of color out in New Mexico really stuck with me. And I'm painting in New Jersey, not New Mexico, so I needed to take that color learning and somehow incorporate it in an honest way, living in the area that I do. And I think it works, and I love color. I enjoy it. It evokes a sense of pleasure when I am able to combine certain colors that work. I want the painting. My goal is to create a painting or sculpture that is much like a fire in a fireplace. You could stare at it, and something's always happening. It's yielding something all the time.
It changes.
It changes, right. And color helps that to happen.
You had a great honor bestowed upon you recently with the Commission for Courage and Compassion. Tell me about it.
Well, it certainly was a great honor because it honors Raoul Wallenberg, who was a Swedish diplomat during the Second War and is credited with saving up to 100,000 lives in Budapest, Hungary. And this was a competition that I had entered and received the award for the design of this sculpture, which now stands in Parsippany, New Jersey. And Courage and Compassion is a 13-foot high bronze. It was an opportunity for me to not only honor Wallenberg, but also to do a piece that shows the best of humanity. The Holocaust showed the worst, but it also showed the best. And Wallenberg, to my mind, represents one of the best. Although there were many stories, there were so many in the Holocaust. And then as I was doing the piece, I started to think about my father, who was a serviceman in World War II and served in the Solomon Islands and Guadalcanal. And he and all those men and women who did things like that, fought in wars and spent their lives trying to save other people, is really what the sculpture is about. Although Wallenberg is the heroic model for that, it's about the heroism in all of us, the transcending of ourselves into something bigger than ourselves for others. It's about love.
How did you get this commission?
Well, it was an odd thing. I responded to a call for artists, but when I read that this call was going out for proposals, it felt as though I knew I was going to get the commission. It was almost as if there was a knowing. That doesn't happen frequently, but it happened in this instance. And I presented a three-dimensional model to a committee of about 15 people. And the original piece that I submitted was not this particular piece, was not Courage and Compassion. But I got a call back, and they said they're asking 3 artists to come back, and would I resubmit a different idea? They had also given us additional information about the site and so on that would affect the design of the sculpture. And the person who talked to me on the phone said, many people liked the piece you presented, but some did not, but they all liked you. So they want you to present another idea along with 2 other people. So I took a walk behind my studio and went into the woods and sat down by a creek and saw some trees that were curving into each other and became fascinated by that interwoven design. And the trees were bare, and it reminded me of the sort of the stilted lives of people in a ghetto. And the image of those 2 trees intertwined really fascinated me and stuck with me. So I went back to the studio and started to bend metal into a particular shape. And that kind of curvature that is in Courage and Compassion emerged. And the centerpiece is a 6-sided stylized Star of David, or symbol of the world. And these two forms are held together by that centerpiece. And it's a very simple piece, but it's in design, but it's very complex because there's something very essential about the form, and it works from all different directions. So I think it says a lot.
You also have a painting about the Holocaust.
Yes. I have done a number of pieces paintings that were coming out of the experience of talking to people who have been in the Holocaust. And sometimes when I go to the studio, well, most of the time, I'm not quite sure what is going to happen. And in other words, I don't approach a painting very often with a preconceived idea as to what it is I want it to be. It begins to happen between myself and the painting as it's being developed. And but I did know that I wanted to do some pieces in oil that were images of the Holocaust, and so really emphasizes the face. And these are the pieces that are reflecting more of the dark side.
Did you do this a short time after you did the other piece?
Yes, a short time. Well, actually, it's sort of a consciousness, Dolly, that an awareness that aspect of my career is there, so that I can draw on. If I'm working a painting and that's what feels right, then I begin to develop the composition and the possibility of a Holocaust-related piece.
I just wondered whether or not the emotion of having worked on the one and the circumstances surrounding it kind of stayed with you for a while and moved you over into doing a painting.
Yeah, I think so. I think that the talking to people who actually were there is so provocative, and their experience is so profound that I find myself going back to the studio, just influenced by that kind of human experience. But Wallenberg was a heroic model. So there are a lot of things that I experience in my life where I see everyday life in people just being triumphant or working through something or giving something. And you know, I think about that when I go back to the studio. But there's a kind of I don't want to create a misconception because when I start to do a work in the studio, my mind sort of doesn't feel consciously it's pulling on that. Because what my conscious mind is doing is paying attention to the creating of the work, to the craft of it to a large extent. And I just allow that other part of it to operate all by itself. I don't want to know about it.
Well, it's almost, it's the same feel, I would imagine, as a dancer or a pianist. They can either sit down with a piece of music and it's almost rote, it's technical.
Right.
It has nothing to do with what is going on in the body. We've all heard pianists like that.
Right.
That nothing else is coming out of the music. Dancers the same way.
That's
so I should imagine your art would come the same way.
And I think it needs to be coming out of unconsciousness rather than consciousness, because the craft of it requires so much attention. You know, in terms of color, line, form, composition, draftsmanship, etc. That's what I want my conscious mind to pay attention to. And I trust my unconscious mind. So, and by unconscious I mean the part of me, the part of the painting that's out of my typical awareness. But I know it's there, so basically I say let it rip. You know?
Well, kind of segueing along, but you do have another piece that you did of Oskar Schindler, right?
Yes.
How did that come about?
Well, a man by the name of, two men, Abe Zuckerman and Murray Pantier, were saved by Oskar Schindler, and they came to a fundraiser for the sculpture Courage and Compassion. And Abe came up to me after the meeting and asked me if I had ever heard of Oskar Schindler. And I said, no, I hadn't. This was way before the movie came out. He said, well, he was saved by Oskar Schindler, and he would like for me to do a bust of him, and that they were working with Steven Spielberg, consulting with him on the authenticity of the movie. And I said, Mr. Zuckerman, I typically don't do busts. It's not, and I could refer you to sculptors who do only that. He said, no, we want you to do it. I said, but I haven't done one in a very long time. He says, but we want you to do it. I said, what if it doesn't come out? And he looked at me and says, you do it again. So
You'll do it till you do it right.
do it right. So it was very compelling. So I accepted the commission, and they took care of Oskar Schindler after the war. So they had access to dozens of photos of him. And so I chose about a dozen to work with, and set to work in the studio, creating the bust initially in clay, and eventually it was cast into bronze. And we did an edition of 4. And the first piece was a gift to Steven Spielberg, which was presented to him at the Waldorf Astoria in New York to thank him for making the movie Schindler's List. The second piece is at Kane University and their Holocaust Studies Center. The third piece is at the corporate headquarters of the two men who commissioned it. And the fourth piece is yet to go to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C.
Were you happy with your work?
Yes. It took almost a year, and it was a struggle. Because I wanted to capture in the sculpture a sense of his complexity, that he wasn't just a saint, that he was also a Nazi. In fact, I went to a flea market and purchased a swastika and put it over top of the place I was working, along with the photographs and the remembrances that Mr. Zuckerman provided for me. And it was working that good-evil dynamic that I wanted somehow to put into the sculpture. So if you look at the sculpture, one would see a man who seems very pained, but at the same time, if you stared at the bronze itself, it can possibly turn into a smirk.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Who was your mentor as a sculptor? I know you talked about the paintings and painters, but what about in the world of sculpture? Who did you look up to? Who were your heroes, or?
Well,
Or didn't you have any?
well, I had remote ones. Certainly, I seem to have always been attracted to the work of Henry Moore. On a personal level, I'm more self-taught in sculpture than I am in painting. I never have had a sculpture class, but I have taught stone sculpture. I have worked in bronze, I have worked in clay, and I've worked in metal.
Which is what you're doing now.
Which I'm doing now, right. So it's the one part of my art life that I feel that I was pretty much on a lonely road on that one. And what drove me was just the love of material, the love of doing three-dimensional form. And also doing a lot of painting. There are times when I say, you know, I'm kind of tired of doing this. I want to work some other way. And so I'll start doing sculpture. And then say to myself, you know, I think I'm done doing sculpture. I want to go back to the painting. In fact, I just finished some training in doing frescoes, which seems to combine both aspects of the sculpture and painting as well. So I love material. I love trying new things.
Do you think you'll keep expanding?
Boy, I hope so. I don't want that to ever stop. Expanding not only in terms of the kinds of work I'm doing, but in the depth of the work that I'm doing.
I always ask this question. If you had your druthers, what do you see ahead for yourself?
Well, I certainly want to be fully alive. You know, I want the work to be fully alive. The work being always being who I am. It's not about what other people want or what other people expect. I want the work to stay honest. I really want to make a contribution in the arts. It's something that's important to me. I want my work to move it along, to be able to influence other artists and give permission to other artists. That's what was given to me by artists who preceded me. So I really want the body of my work, the gist of my work to be influential to creativity.
So you don't have an egotistical outlook on it.
Well, I wouldn't admit to it anyway. You know, it's like,
Well, you can't be in any of the creative aspects of life without being somewhat egotistical.
Well, the way I look at it is I'm surprised when people don't like my work, Dolly. I mean, when someone comes into the gallery or comes into the studio, I'm not surprised that they're responding to the work. If I'm responding to it, I would assume other people would respond. That doesn't mean everybody likes it or everybody wants to own it. They don't. But I'm surprised when someone doesn't feel something from what's going on in my work.
Well, just think if they don't like it, Ed, you can always sick Mackie on them.
That's true.
Who from time to time is snoring through this entire interview.
That's right. He's a 90, 100-pound Akita who is trained to attack anyone who doesn't like my art.
Well, see, he is ignoring me completely today.
He does that real well to all of us. So.
Do you ever take him to the gallery?
Yes, on occasions. But the gallery is rather small, so with him in there, there's very little room.
How long have you had the gallery? It is a lovely gallery because we were there before we came here.
Thank you. I opened it 3 years ago, almost to the day. And the decision was that I was showing work throughout the country and entering shows, doing what artists do. And I was also represented by a variety of galleries, some of which closed down, and I didn't feel I had control. And so I decided to take that control by opening my own space. And it's been great because people can come to the gallery and see new work. They could develop a relationship with my work over time. And it gives me an opportunity to keep working. You know, I mean, I always have a show.
Where is the gallery?
The gallery is located in Lambertville. It's on Coryell Street, back in a little area called the Porkyard. Used to be a slaughterhouse. Is now galleries, and there is the restaurant and a bar back there. And my little space, it's called the E.M. Adams Gallery 397. 397 is Lambertville's phone exchange, so I used it for the title of the gallery. And it's open on weekends, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I'm usually there physically on Sundays. So if people want to come in and talk to me about the work, that's when I'm usually there.
Well, that about winds it up for today. I hope all of you enjoyed our visit to Lambertville with artist Ed Adams. Come down, get a look at his gallery if you get a chance. I'll see you all next month, and in the meantime, take care.